Okay, hello IP3. This is the second video I'm recording for you. You should have already seen your English video by now, but we also need to review science. So like we did with our English video, I'm going to take it back to the very first chapter that we did in IP3, right at the beginning of the year, and we are going to review plants. Now this PowerPoint that I'm about to show you, a lot of it you will have seen before in class, but now you get to watch me explain it to you again. So this lesson puts together a few of the lessons that we did in chapter 1 all together. And then I have a worksheet for you that you've not seen before that I want you to answer. So IP3 Summer 2020 Review, Science Chapter 1 Plants. And in this lesson, we're going to review the parts of a plant, which hopefully you'll all remember anyway. So, you should remember that a plant is a living thing that grows on land or in water. So plants can't move from place to place. Don't just think that plants only grow on land, because we learned about things like water lilies that grow on water. And most, not all, but most plants have green leaves. You should remember that plants need a few things to stay alive. So people and animals need to breathe. They breathe in air. We need water to drink, and we need food to eat. But plants, they have needs of their own. So plants need water, air, and sunlight to live. Now, most plants also need soil. Not all plants, because don't forget, some plants live on water, but most plants, the ones that live on land, need soil, because a soil gives a plant nutrients. A nutrient is a substance that living things need to survive, to stay alive, and to grow. So, as we already said, plants can't move from place to place. So they can't just go out and look for food and look for water. A plant can't go to 7-Eleven, buy a toastie, and have the nutrients it needs, like people and animals can. So plants have special parts that help them get the things they need. And there's three things that almost all plants have, and they each do a couple of jobs that help the plant stay alive. So the three parts of a plant, which I hope you remember anyway, are roots, a stem, and leaves. Okay. So roots. Usually you can't see the roots of a plant because they grow underground. So you'll see the top part of the plant, but the roots are usually in the soil below the ground. Now, the most important job that roots do is they collect water and nutrients from the soil. Like I've already told you, plants need water and they need nutrients to stay alive. And for plants that live on land, that comes from the soil. So the roots, they have tiny little hairs, tiny little parts that look like hairs, and they spread the roots out through the soil to get as much water and as much nutrients as possible. But that's not the only job that roots do. They have two jobs. So as well as collecting water and nutrients, they support the plant. That means they keep the plant in place in the ground, so it doesn't just fall over. Imagine this plant without any roots. It would just go, boop, fall over. So it keeps the plant in place. Now, I said that usually you can't see the roots of a plant, but with some trees, let's move out the way, you can actually see them where the soil has been washed away. So trees, they need to have very, very big roots. As you can imagine, a tree is huge, big. So if it had little tiny roots, again, it'd just fall over. So trees have very, very big roots to stop it from falling over. Another thing that maybe you remember is that sometimes we eat roots. So we use roots as food sometimes. The most common one, the most famous root that we eat is carrots. So you might not realize that carrots actually grow underground. When you're eating a carrot, you're eating the root of this plant over here. Other examples of root vegetables are turnips, radishes, and beetroots. So these are all plants, and part that we eat, the turnip, the radish, and the beetroot, they are actually the root of the plant. So these grow inside the soil underground. Okay. Stems. Most plants have long, thin stems like this. And inside those stems, there's little tiny tubes, and the plants use these tubes to carry all of the water and nutrients that they get from the soil all to the different parts of the plant. As well as carrying water and nutrients around the plant, the other job that stems do is to hold the leaves. So we'll talk about leaves later, but they need to be held. They can't just, they need something to be attached to. So the stem holds up the leaves, which lets them collect sunlight and air, which we'll explain why that's important in a moment. A tree has a stem, and you might know the name of the tree's stem as being a trunk. So trunks are very big, very wide, and they help hold the tree's branches. Okay. Stems, as well as holding the leaves and carrying water and nutrients, they also have a job to store food. So a cactus stem stores water, and a sugarcane stores its own food. So we've talked about cactuses already in last year. So a cactus, as you already know, grows in the deserts where it's very, very hot, very, very dry, and we don't get much water, much rainfall there. So when there is water for the cactus, because it's still a plant, still needs water to stay alive, when the cactus does get water, it stores that water inside its big, thick stem so it can keep that water for a long time. We talked about some of the roots that we eat, but we also eat some stems. So celery and asparagus, these are both stems. When you eat celery or asparagus, you are eating the stem of a plant. Last part, leaves. So we already said that the stem's job, one of the stem's jobs, is to hold the leaves. And so the leaves grow out of the stem of a plant. And most plants have many, many leaves. Now, leaves have a very important job because they need to make food for the plant. So leaves, they take in sugar and air, they take in sunlight and air from the environment around them, and inside the leaf, they turn that into sugar. We talked about this a little bit last year. Hopefully you remember, some of you might remember, that this is called photosynthesis. When a plant makes its own food in its leaves by collecting in sunlight and air, that is photosynthesis. It makes sugar, and the plant uses the sugar as food. So that's why leaves usually grow near the top of a plant. So when you look at a tree outside, all the leaves are at the top because the tree makes sure that the leaves grow at the top where they're closest to the sun, so they get the most sunlight, so they can make the most food. But some plants have different shape. Some plants have different shape leaves. So spines on a cactus, you might not realize that those are leaves, but they are. And the needles on a pine tree, these are different shape leaves. And again, there's some leaves that we eat. So lettuce, spinach, and my least favorite, cabbage. These are all leaves that you can eat. Okay, that's the end of our lecture. And I'm just going to explain your worksheet. It's actually a little bit different to the worksheets that we did last year, because last year you were used to worksheets where I would give you a gap fill to do. This is similar to a gap fill, but not quite the same. Sorry, I just need to open one more thing to show you. Okay. So this is your worksheet. We have IP3 Science Chapter 1 Plants Review Worksheet Week 1. First one, quite easy. Label the stem, the leaves and the roots. That's very easy on this plant. But this one, rather than being a gap fill, you need to answer all of these questions. So what 4 things do plants that live on land need to survive? Describe 2 jobs that roots do. 2 roots that you can eat. Tell me why trees have very big roots. 2 jobs that stems do. 2 stems you can eat. What do we call a tree's stem? Describe the job that leaves do. And 2 leaves that you can eat. Now, rather than just filling in words into empty spaces, this is going to make you use your brains a little bit, if you still have your brains after all this time without school. So, you don't need to watch this video again. You should have a collection of notes that you can read. So these notes, they explain everything that we've just talked about in that video, in that PowerPoint. So all of the answers to these questions you can find in your notes. And if you don't want to use notes, you should still be able to get on the PowerPoints from last year on the IP3 Dropbox. Okay, so that is it for this week's science lesson. We will continue with leaves next week, with plants next week, and we'll be talking about the different ways that you can classify leaves, roots, and stems. So until next week, bye-bye IP3.